Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Stridarn. Please turn on your mic so everybody can hear you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton? Here. Ms. Green? Here. Dr. Henderson?
Here.
Mr. Howard? Here. Mr. Levenstein? Here. Ms. Maida? Here. Ms. Mineo?
Here.
Mr. Stridarn?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of programs and placements of students with disabilities, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, CSCA, NTA, NASA, discussion regarding current litigation, DSV, NESCD, NECSD et al., and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Roll call.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levenstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. We'll be back in a while. Mr. Stridarn, can I see? Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to call on Mr. Forget to introduce our first group of, well, we have a group of students, so let's introduce them.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening we are honored with having the opportunity to meet some of our scholars, to celebrate some of the outstanding achievement that they've had over the summer. And Mr. Harrison is going to be presenting this honor to us.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education, senior staff, and community members. I am here tonight to acknowledge several scholars who have accomplished outstanding achievements this summer in athletic events. This is a student recognition for community-based organizations. Without further ado, please let me introduce, hello? Okay. Without further ado, please let me introduce Kanaja Ray Pasquale. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jazair Juniors. Coach Leonard Lee. These young scholars won gold and silver medals, respectively, at the U.S. Junior Olympic Nationals and the USA Boxing 2020 National Championships in Louisiana this summer. As I said, they're coached by Leonard Lee at the Hook Elite Boxing in the city of Newburgh. Congratulations again to these athletes and their coach. In addition, we would like to recognize 5 athletes for winning the 4x400 meter relay and the Swedish relay at the 2021 Outdoor National Championships in Oregon this summer. Esteban Lopez. Yep. There we go. Matthew Worrell. James Onawaka. Jean Origine. John Firmpalm. And Coach Malcolm Burks. Good job. Esteban Lopez, who is currently attending the University of Nevada, placed first in the 4x400 meter relay. Matthew Worrell placed first in the Swedish relay. James Onawaka, who is currently attending Penn State. Jean Origine, who is currently attending John McCrae College, and John Firmpong were on both the winning relay teams. These athletes are coached by Malcolm Burks, Newburgh Elite in the city of Newburgh. Congratulations again to these athletes and their coach. Please join me in giving them one more round of applause. Job well done. Thank you. Have a great night.
Very proud of our young people. Congratulations, everyone, and to those parents and to those coaches who have helped them out. So thank you and congratulations. We're going to change the agenda around a little bit. So I have a couple of things that I need to add to the agenda. So we're going to do them now. And the first thing is, would you like to read that first resolution to add?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby appoints Deputy Superintendent Ed Forget as the acting superintendent of schools, effective August 24th, 2021, in the absence of the superintendent.
I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion to add? Roll call to add, please.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levenstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Mr. Shaw, would you like to say something, please?
Yes, there was an issue regarding the authority of the deputy superintendent to serve as acting superintendent. So to make it clear that that authority exists in the absence of the superintendent, this resolution is being placed before the board.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Maida?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
The second item I have is, please read that for me, Mr. McCoy.
Be it resolved that the Board President is authorized to execute an addendum agreement with Dr. Lisa Marie Spindler as presented to the Board at this meeting, a copy of which agreement is incorporated herein by reference.
I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda, please. Roll call to add.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
I'd like to add a third item. Mr. McCoy?
Be it resolved that the Board President is hereby authorized to execute an addendum agreement with Dr. Pedro Roman as presented to the Board at this meeting, a copy of which agreement is incorporated hereon by reference.
I'd like to entertain a motion to add, please. Roll call to add.
Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on this item? Yes?
I see some confused looks in the public, and they can't see what these items are. Can someone just explain what these last two items were?
Mr. Forget, are you comfortable talking about these last two items? That's what you're talking about, yes? Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Mineo, these last two items refer to support that Dr. Spindler and Dr. Roman will be provided to continue with the direction that the district is currently moving, to keep the day-to-day operations moving, and to make sure that we have a safe and orderly opening of school, and beyond that, continue with the educational program that we're providing to our students. Dr. Spindler will be assisting with the day-to-day operations. Dr. Roman will be assisting with policy specifically as we continue to move in the direction that we're going.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein?
I'd like to add a policy, so would you like to read that resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board hereby adopts the following policy on the first reading, 5502, grading for grades 6 through 12.
May I have I'd like to entertain a resolution to add this to the agenda, please. Roll call to add.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Maida?
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Can someone please explain exactly what the changes are in this policy?
Sure. Mr. Forget?
Yes, Madam President. The specific change for secondary course credit clarifies the lowest score of a 55 on the report card. It's defined as students who receive a grade for a task or an assignment throughout the marking period will receive the actual grade that the students earned and were provided by the teacher. That will be recorded in the grade book. The summative score, if below 55, will then be converted to a 55 as the lowest score as the summative on the report card of the marking period. That is the specific change. It's clarity on the 55 under number 3, a little bit further up if you don't mind.
Gentlemen, can you roll a little bit up on the policy? Hello?
Point of order, we're currently talking about 5502. What's on the screen is 5201.
So let's put the right one up. Sorry, everybody.
The policy I just described was the secondary course credit, which was displayed on the screen. The second policy for consideration this evening is grading. The grading policy change that we're recommending is to move from the level of 1, 2, 3, 4, going back to the straight percentage of the scores. So the grading policy that you're going to consider is a change from the calculation of a student's scores to a level. We're now reverting back to students earned an 85% based on the average score for that marking period. It will reflect an 85%, not convert it to a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's the grading policy change. The secondary course credit policy change that I explained really clearly defined when a change with regards to the 55 would take place, and that's at the end of the marking period. Students' true scores will be reflected in the teacher's gradebook based on their score provided by the teacher.
Mr. Stradine, you still look a little confused. Do you have another question?
No, I understand what it is now. I agree with the change to go back to the numerical system of, not that I agree with 55, but up to 100. And then when it comes to this next one, I'll talk about why I disagree with the 55.
So help me, Mr. McCoy, which policy are we on right this second?
5502, ma'am.
And the name of that is?
Grading, grades 6 through 12.
Okay. So we've added it. Anybody else have questions or discussion? Roll call on this, please.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton? Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes. So now I'd like to add another policy. And would you read that, please, sir?
Be it resolved that the board hereby adopts the following policy on the first reading, 5201, secondary course credit.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda, please.
Second.
Roll call to add.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
And that's the end of my section, correct?
That is not correct, ma'am. Now we have to vote on 5201.
Trying to do this, but it's not always good. All right, so I'd like to, we have to vote now? We have to entertain a motion first.
That's correct.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion. Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradine.
So at this point, we're going to be giving a 55 to a student no matter what at the end of the semester on the report card, whether they do any work at all or whether they've tried really, really hard and they've struggled and they got a 55. So how is that fair to the student who may have a learning disability, who's been trying and coming to school every day, trying to get as best grade as possible, and they get a 55. Meanwhile, the student next to them never sits in the class. They get the same grade. Can you please explain if that situation could happen?
Mr. Forget, would you like to try that one, or would you want to pass it on to someone?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Soto, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education. Our purpose behind this particular policy is to make sure that every student has the opportunity throughout the year to succeed. What we found is that students who are scoring at a very low rate by the mid-year, if they are receiving a 20 on an average, they basically give up. The 55 gives us that opportunity to continue to reflect with that student, to counsel that student, to guide that student to get back on track and to help them get back on track. So by having that 55 as the lowest grade, which is a very, very low score, it's not even passing, still gives the opportunity at the mid-year for a student to not give up, to continue to pursue with our counseling support and guidance by our counseling staff and our teaching staff. Ms. Soto, would you like to comment?
Thank you. With respect to your second point, that student who struggles in class and still earns the 55, after meeting the faculty and staff here in this district, they're heart-centered teachers. I doubt quite unlikely that we will have a situation where that student will fail without support or differentiating the lessons to ensure that that student will pass our courses.
Mr. Stradine, this was something that we discussed in policy at length. Those students who are not attending or are habitually failing and having trouble in class. And we talked about perhaps putting in a lot of supports to help those students right away. So we catch them right away, and it doesn't go so long for those particular students that you were addressing, as well as some of our IEP students, to be able to catch them up and make them feel and be able to capture the work. Go ahead.
So do we know how many of those students who are coming to class and struggling in each class? Do we have that data? And do we have the data on the students that don't come to class but still get the 55 and then possibly go to credit recovery? Which is a whole nother.
Where would I get that answer, Mr. Forget?
So let me see if I understand what you're saying. You would like to know at the end of each marking period, the number of students that received a 55 that actually scored lower? Is that one request?
Not that I need to know.
No,
I just want to know if everyone who's looking at the data and is working with the students, that they know the data so that they can do what needs to be done to help those students.
Yes, thank you. So we have what's called the Good to Go system, which means based on a cohort, based on the graduating cohort of students, on a quarterly basis, the principal of the school, the guidance counselors, and the assistant principals in charge of that cohort sit down and have conversations, and they monitor the students that are progressing through the program at that time. So they'll know the kids that are succeeding and moving and need to be challenged a little bit further. They'll know the kids that are on par and they're moving. And then they'll know the kids that need additional support, whether it be for an attendance intervention, a mental health intervention, or an academic intervention. But that Good to Go system has been put in place, and we can provide you with information on the findings from those meetings over the past year.
I would just be curious to know if this works. Is it working for the kids is it going to help them to learn? Or is it just another way to get them over the finish line and then, hey, they've graduated and then who knows? My whole thing is always I want the kids to learn, not to just know the system enough to get through. I don't want the system to be created so it just push them. I want them to learn.
Mr. Howard, do you have?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So part of the discussion that we had in policy, we talked about the students that you referred to that aren't coming to school at all. There's a reason why kids aren't coming to school at all. And I think we need to be more cognizant of identifying those students earlier, not wait till a 5-week notice, not wait till a quarter end. First 10 days of school, but kids missing 7, 8, 9 days out of a school district, out of a class or from school, that's a problem. And I think we as a district need to be more cognizant of identifying these children and finding out what the issues are. Kids don't just not come to school. There's a reason behind it. And I think that we as a district need to be more mindful of why these kids aren't coming to school instead of just saying, you didn't come to school, we're failing you. These kids are not coming to school for reasons. And then if we have to refer it out to DSS or to other agencies to get things right, there's a reason. And to be perfectly honest with you, this is something that should start at the elementary level. A kid just does not just stop coming to school at the high school level or middle school. This is something that if you trace it back, if you do a longitudinal study, you go back, I guarantee you those kids that are doing it at the high school level, 15, 16 years old, there were issues earlier, and we need to identify that. We need to be worrying about the whole child holistically, not just about failing a child. Let's find out why a kid is not coming to school. Let's find out why a kid is not learning. I mean, if we're going to be about it, let's be about the whole issue here. This is a comprehensive conversation. It's not just about giving a kid a 55 who hasn't come to school. Why has this child not come to school? There's reasons behind it, and we need to be more cognizant of that as a school board.
Thank you. First, Mr. Levinstein, then Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Madam President. So I agree somewhat with Mr. Stridiron. And my thing is, you're right. You could have two kids sitting next to each other with 55s. One put in a lot of effort, and that's all they could do for whatever reasons, and someone did not. So, but what I'm hearing is that there's two directions of help for that. When a student has a 55 and needs help, there's going to be a different path for students that didn't come to school versus students that need extra support because they can't fully understand it. So if that's the way we go with 55, then that's a good way to go. Not just, okay, this person only had zeros and ended up, getting a 55. So it's just two divergent paths of how to treat those 55s. Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. I'd like to just add on a little to what Philip said. After 41 years of teaching, I do not believe that most students who are not doing well are trying to game the system. There are very real reasons for them not doing that well, and to assume that regardless of how much they come to school or not, initially at least, we have to take into consideration that there's other reasons. One thing that hasn't, we've talked about, and it's kind of concerning me, about kids, in a way, getting farmed out, right? You got a problem, you go to this counselor. You got a problem, you go to that program. That's fine. It may well work. But what will also work, I think even better, is training teachers how to recognize and look for these students who, particularly at the high school, who are really ready and ripe to be educated if they are not treated like something to be farmed out, but someone, a human being who has problems and can make it with proper coaching coming from teachers themselves, even more so than 40 years ago when I taught.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Burton.
So I hear a little bit about this and a little bit about that. My concern is, I understand the whole concept of young people having difficulties, whether it's home difficulties, other academic issue difficulties. My concern is similar to what Mr. Walker is saying, which is, why are we waiting until high school for this to be an issue when you have young people who are in this district from K all the way up until 8th grade? And so we already have a policy where 8th graders, if they don't pass 2 years of 8th grade, we promote them to 9th grade, already understanding that they may not have the academic wherewithal to do well in high school academically. So I believe it's amicable to provide a 55 to a student on the onset. If that's going to promote self-esteem, if that's going to give a young person an opportunity to work a little harder and be more motivated. My concern is that we use this as a persistence, remedy, meaning, it happens 4 quarters in 9th grade, it happens 4 quarters in 10th grade. Now it's a persistent issue. And that I have a problem with, because then you have to ask the question, then why are students who aren't faring well in this district, why are they coming to school? What's the purpose of public education? If we can pinpoint it's no learning disabilities, okay, but if there are other issues, as Mr. Howard is saying, these things have to be identified sooner than later. Because if we're graduating students with 55s, they're really not, you know, what is that saying about our integrity around we want to have scholars here? You know, and so how do we begin to work with the community? You know, we have community people here who know these kids, okay? And do we have opportunities for people who are, we had two people from our community who are working with athletes. Why aren't they also working with our kids academically, if that's the case? Because it can't just be the one. We, like Mr. Howard is saying, we want kids that are wholly, academically, physically, emotionally sound people who can graduate from this institution called the New Bergen Large City School District and be successful beyond academy field. That's our goal. And yes, it's not all academics, but academics has to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Walker.
I recently read two studies. One study said that as early as pre-K, when kids are asked to line up to do whatever activity, they line up according to race at 3 or 4 years old. And the black and brown ones end up at the end. That's a sign right there. Another thing that I read said that for every black teacher in a high school, the graduation percentage and students who go to college goes up 2%. Go figure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton?
No.
Ms. Green? No. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Mr. Walker? Yes. That item passes.
Thank you. And now I'm done with my section. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our acting superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we would like to present to you as a team, your senior staff team, our plans for reopening. We're moving away from the term reopening because we've reopened and now we want to continue to open and we want to move in a positive, progressive manner. So we're going to present to you our opening of schools for next week. And I'll start off the presentation with talking about the multi-layered strategies that we need to put in place to make sure that the students are safe, that the faculty is safe, and that the staff are safe. So on this particular slide, it talks to you about those multi-layered strategies that school districts and schools should have put in place. We should be talking about training and education around the particular virus and healthy environments that administrators, teachers, and the adults in the building are aware of so that they're providing that environment for the students. Regular hand washing, regular cleaning and disinfecting, not just waiting till the end of the day, but routine cleaning throughout the day. The high frequency areas where people are touching constantly, we're just going through and cleaning. Making sure that everyone understands what an isolation is, what a quarantine is, and why that's so critical and important to prevent the spread. And making sure that our health services team is supported, not just by directives, but by providing them with additional support or individuals that can help them when individuals are sick so that we can isolate and we can make sure that the teachers have the proper opportunity to teach in the classroom while health services are doing their job. COVID-19 testing This Board of Education at the last meeting put in place a requirement for testing for unvaccinated adults in the district. We are in the process right now of coordinating that testing. We will probably be doing it with our own health services staff. We will probably be doing it with the Binex test, which will give us the results within a 15 to 20-minute period. And hopefully, we will increase the rate of vaccinations so that we will eliminate the need for that weekly testing. But without the vaccination, all adults in the district will have to go through weekly testing. As soon as we secure those tests, we'll implement that particular practice. Airflow and circulation, you're going to hear a little bit more about that. The district has secured the MERV 13 filters for our ventilators. Mr. Ramjug will be sharing some information about that, as will Dr. Spindler. Physical distancing, we're trying to make sure that individuals stay within 3. If we can go 6 feet, we'll go 6. If you go 3, we'll go 3. If you can't go that, we cannot prevent the schools from opening. What are those other strategies that we can put in place that will keep people healthy other than social distancing? We're looking at the mandated masks that all individuals in the school district are now required to wear. We do have a mask mandate. It was put in place effective yesterday. It seems to be in alignment with other schools districts in Orange County. It is following the CDC guidance. It's following the American Academy of Pediatrics guidance. And it's also following, it seems to be, the future of what our new governor may be doing across the state. And then COVID-19 vaccinations. Yesterday, we vaccinated over 100 people at Newburgh Free Academy, Maine, and we have a commitment from an organization in Middletown that will continue to support us with offering vaccine clinics throughout the district. So it's one thing to have all these strategies, but if you're not monitoring whether they're making a difference or not, and if you're not watching the data, you're not really going to have the preventive options that we're looking for. So we're going to be looking at the results of the screening tests. So as we're screening and we're doing the COVID-19 testing, we're going to be looking for patterns and trends of those particular results. We're going to be watching the vaccination rates, not only in the county, but looking at the vaccination rates in the town of Newburgh, the city of New Windsor, and the town of Newburgh, so that we can make sure that the vaccination rates are moving in a positive direction and continue to offer opportunities for families to access those vaccinations, working with the county and Mr. Newhouse to do that. Strain on the health system. We have St. Luke's Hospital that's right up the hill. We've got to keep our eye on what's happening with the COVID-19 rates and the ICU capacity, so that we're monitoring that to determine what impact is that having within the schools. So keeping our eye on the data from the hospital systems. Taking a look at the community transmission. The CDC gave us a data dashboard that we can use. It will tell us what level of transmission and gives us some really good recommendations as to how to react and shift and pivot based on those particular transmission rates. And then the COVID-19 outbreaks. We need to keep an eye on, not only internally in the district, but what's happening in the community as well. And how can we work with those community providers to react to that data? The monitoring strategies have to be in place along with the mitigation strategies that we're putting in place. We've had a lot of conversations with our principals this week, so they have a lot of questions. Can we do parent-teacher conferences? Can we do open house? Can we use lockers? One of the tools that the CDC provided us very early on, provided by the CDC Foundation, was called a risk assessment. And what they basically asked us to do was to take a look at the various scenarios that occur within a school. And they asked us to take a look at the descriptors that are aligned with it. Descriptors such as movement, what direction, how does the traffic pattern move? How can you control the traffic pattern to reduce the amount of individuals that come in contact with each other? How long will people be in the same room together within a certain distance of each other? Proximity, the 3-foot versus the 6-foot social distancing, the group size. Can you host events in multiple rooms and get the same outcome? Respiratory output, speaking specifically in the area of the fine and performing arts. Looking at touch, how often are surfaces touched, whether it be the doorknob, whether it be the desk, whether it be the chair. congestion, where are those places? Arrival of students, are they congregating upon arrival? Or do we have a system put in place that students have the opportunity to freely, continuously move so that they're not congregating? And then do we have the opportunity to offer indoor versus outdoor? Not just for the cafeteria or lunch, but can we provide opportunities for instruction outdoors? Can you move your science classroom outdoors? Can you teach that with that same level of integrity in an outdoor environment that you do in an indoor environment? For us to impose our decisions on our principals with these particular areas is not appropriate. But to guide our principals to sit down with their faculties and staff to take each of these different scenarios, whether it be a meeting, whether it be family open house, whether it be a PTO meeting, and create the environment with the lowest amount of risk possible so that the environment that those are being provided in does not put any individual, whether it be a student, whether it be a faculty member, whether it be a community member at risk, is the direction that we're trying to go. We sent this risk assessment out to all the principals today. Mr. Baer is meeting with each of the principals and talking them through the particular scenarios and guiding them through how do we put in the strategies to get us to the lowest amount of risk so that we can provide these opportunities to our families, to our community, and to our students.
So thank you, Mr. Forget. So at this time, we've invited Dr. Jay Thomas. He's our medical director, sitting to my right. Dr. Thomas, would you mind going up to the podium? We asked him because we thought there were some important questions that were posed by the Board of Education, and we just want to make sure that we're following the medical science in our decision making and to kind of outline some of the concerns that have been risen. He's also willing to take any other questions if need be. So in previous board meetings, we discussed the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. The board has implemented an expectation that our unvaccinated staff will be tested weekly, and there was questions about viral load that came up. So we're just asking Dr. Thomas to kind of just give us some sense of really what the science is saying about that at this point. There were some conversations also about what kind of masks are really the appropriate masks as part of the mitigating strategies, and do these masks that I'm wearing, the hospital masks, actually provide sufficient protection against the coronavirus and the Delta variant? And where do masks and vaccinations come into play in terms of our ability to remain open as a school? And what is the medical science saying regarding that? So those are the questions we're asking Dr. Thomas to consider today, and certainly if any other questions need to be answered. So Dr. Thomas, starting with, we talked today about viral load and what the difference is, and does that matter or not when you're dealing with something like a Delta variant and a pandemic? Can you just enlighten the board and us on what you know about this?
Thank you for inviting me. It's a lot of pressure to answer all these questions. Science doesn't have all the answers of this yet. But as far as viral load, that's a very superfluous term. What does that mean? If someone has 2 COVID organisms versus 1,000 COVID organisms, do you feel more comfortable around that person? So to me, that doesn't really help me decide anything. I don't know of any studies or any discussions that say, oh, this person has this much viral load, this person has that much viral load. So I don't really have an answer to address about viral load. To me, it's either infected or not. The vaccinated versus unvaccinated, I think a lot of people choose not to be vaccinated because I think maybe a lot of people don't understand how this vaccine works. Excuse me. In the past, vaccines were made where they took an organism, they attenuated it, they took out its mechanisms, and they put it back in the body. And the body would recognize this dead virus, and it would make antibodies, and that's how the person got immunity. This vaccine does not put COVID in the body. What it does is it tells the body to make antibodies against the spikes on the virus. So you're not exposed to COVID at all. There's something called messenger RNA, which is a component in our bodies where they take that and it goes into the body, tells the body to make antibodies against the spikes. But there's no COVID being injected in the body. As far as masks, these are the masks we wear in the hospital. If someone is going into a room where a patient has full-blown COVID and is dying, yeah, you would wear this mask, you'd wear N95, you'd wear a shield, you'd wear the PAPR, the respirator, the thing you see people have with the tube in the back. But this is safe enough. This will protect you against exposure, you know. I think instead of me keep talking, maybe I'll take some questions if anyone has any questions.
Well,
lingering
excuse me,
around.
you can take questions from the board.
Whatever you'd like me to do.
Does anybody, board members, any questions or comments? How about Dr. Henderson first, then Mr. Stridine?
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I just want to kind of cut through the butter on this situation because the science and working in multiple healthcare settings is showing that fully vaccinated individuals are arriving to hospitals, to healthcare facilities, asymptomatic, and the only reason they find out that they are COVID positive is because they're being tested upon entry. Then there's also staff members who are fully vaccinated and may just show up to work and they become COVID positive. So I want the science and the statistics to prove why standardized testing of unvaccinated individuals is effective, specifically staff members. Why is that necessary? Besides the fact that it indicates if that person were to get COVID, we could expect that the symptoms would be more serious. What is the purpose of continually testing them? Because just like you said, the viral load is the viral load. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So if I understand the question, right, why should we test people that are vaccinated?
Why are we testing adults who are unvaccinated? That's what the policy is now saying. We're testing unvaccinated individual adults weekly. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, I mean,
besides a waste of resources.
All right. Well, here's the thing. I was visiting college with my daughter, and they had the library closed due to COVID, but they had the theater opened. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But someone who's not vaccinated, right? I think they should know if they're positive, if they're infected.
I'd just like to respond to that. Yeah, again, but as you stated, the viral load is the viral load.
Right,
So
right.
It doesn't matter if you're unvaccinated and I'm vaccinated. If we both test positive, all you're doing is indicating that I have a greater risk of dying from a side effect due to COVID and that you have a shield around you.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of doing this on a weekly basis? We already know you have a shield. You're vaccinated. I know I don't have a shield. Why am I being tested weekly aside from just an unnecessary waste of resources? Because I'll tell you right now, they're not doing this in hospitals. You either test all or you test none. You test people coming in or you test none.
Well, I mean, I would disagree with that. I mean, in the hospital, the majority of the people are vaccinated. And the ones that are not, I mean, they are being tested. I mean, part of the thought, I think, is if someone is not vaccinated, you want to know if they're positive. You want to take them, you know, to go get care or something. But, I mean, I don't have any answer for you on that. I don't know what's so bad about being tested.
Okay.
Again, I think the main point is that, you know, these things all have a cost associated with it, and it also identifies individuals who may just not feel comfortable getting vaccinated. If there's no purpose to the actual weekly testing, then why are we doing it? We're just exercising We're going through the motions. And that doesn't happen in hospitals. You know, if you may be mandated to get vaccinated, sure, but again, there are fully vaccinated individuals arriving to healthcare facilities with no COVID symptoms. You may come in with just weakness or a UTI or whatever, and then the only reason they find out that they're COVID positive, even though they're fully vaccinated, is because they swab them upon admission. So unless we're doing that with every single student, every single staff member, every single person who comes in the building, what is the purpose?
So is the district planning to swab everyone that walks into the building?
I think that's a discussion that Mr. Forget and his team will have to talk about. Right now, we have a policy, and the policy is one that is, that talks about testing the unvaccinated. So right now, that's not for this discussion, but I know Mr. Stridarn, you had a question. Would you like to ask?
Yes, I'm actually quite surprised at this conversation. Dr. Henderson, I agree with you 100%. I don't understand the testing only unvaccinated people if everyone is carrying the same viral load. It's possible. Whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, wearing these paper masks, it's not going to protect you from getting COVID. It will protect maybe some droplets get through if you sneeze or...
No, this mask will protect you from COVID. I mean, I'm wearing it with the confidence that I will not catch it.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm not
I have to
confident.
tell you.
I'm wearing this because they asked me to wear this. But
Well, I'm wearing it also because it's the policy to wear it. But when we all go to Costco, to Target, and we have the mask on, that's protecting us.
Okay. Do you have a question?
yeah,
So ask the question.
okay.
And
So
then I can move on.
So what's the cost to the district of testing the unvaccinated? Have you projected that cost per week, per day, whatever? And what percentage of people do you anticipate testing in the schools?
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
So Sharon Patsalos, who is our health service facilitator, and I have been working on this for a while. We've contacted some of the vendors that do provide these rapid tests. Abbott is the primary one that provides the Binax. We're working with the different vendors as well as with the state, and there's some contemplation that there will be no cost, that the state and the funds that were provided to the county will assume responsibility for the cost. So we're still working through that, but there's a very good chance that this may be little to no cost to the district because of the way this has been set up as part of the rescue monies. There's monies that are available in Orange County specifically for helping with the testing side for schools. So we believe there's also the state has some responsibility over this, and that's something that she's having conversations with the vendors and how they have contracts with the state. So we're still working through that, but we do believe there'll be little to no cost to the district.
I have a question, if I can.
Oh,
I do.
for me?
Now-
Okay, go ahead.
Is the district treating positive vaccinated people and positive unvaccinated people the same as far as quarantine, as far as taking days off to see if they get well, or how is
We're following the CDC recommendations on how to quarantine and isolate. So again, the CDC guidelines do recommend that we do test unvaccinated staff members in the school setting. We are, if we do have concerns, if a person is found to be in close contact, we go through the protocols that were established by the CDC, 6 feet over 15 minutes in a 24-hour period for the adults, and we then take the steps going forward. If they're vaccinated, according to the CDC, we do not need to quarantine, but we ask that the people who are in close contact and who have been exposed do monitor their symptoms for 3 to 5 days, and we also, based on the CDC, there's a recommended they be tested in that time period to ensure they don't have COVID. If you're unvaccinated, based on the protocol, we do have to quarantine if you are in close contact, if that is part of the contact tracing protocol.
Okay.
So if I
Thank you,
understand
Dr.
correctly,
Thomas.
that kind of answers why
I'm going
everyone
to
should
cut
be
you off
tested.
right now, and I'm going
Just
to bring
curious.
it back to Dr. Henderson. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess my question specifically was that you stated you feel fully safe protected from COVID with a standard medical mask, but during your speech or your statement, you said that if you're around somebody who's COVID positive, you should wear an N95 mask. So what is the guidance? Thank you.
No, what I said was, if I'm going into a room where there's high-pressure ventilation, there's BiPAP machines, there's CPAP machines, there's a respirator there, and there's a lot of fluid flowing around, I mean, a lot of air from a respirator or from BiPAP, and it's a closed space, yeah, I may want more protection. But
Thank
if I'm
you,
in a
Dr.
room where there's
Thomas.
ventilation and everything, it's...
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Let's continue with the presentation, please.
What's the rate of the Rhinex test? I think you said. What's the rate that catches COVID? Like, is there like a percentage that they've come out with that said it works 90% of the time, 70% of the time? What's the percentage there?
I don't personally have that information, so we can certainly find that out for you. I know Dr. Rahman was involved in this at one point. We did use the Binax as part of our surveillance at one point. So I don't know, but we can certainly get that information to you if you.
Okay, let's move on with the presentation, please.
Okay, so moving on.
Are we done?
As most of you are already aware, students will be returning to 5 days of in-person instruction as recommended by the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and endorsed by NYSET, the New York State United Teachers, to ensure the following: continuity of learning, equity, social and emotional development, physical and nutritional health. And to support that, we'd just like to share a very brief video clip with you.
Why am I sending my kids back? Let me show you. Kids always learn better in classrooms with hands-on instruction than online. More social interaction means kids are happier, healthier, and learn better. Extracurricular activities mean well-rounded kids. And doctors and health advisors say schools are safe, with health protocols in place and experts monitoring everything. My kids are ready for school. I hope they see your kids here.
Okay, so as just described, we are looking to have all of our students in fully 5 days a week in person, though we recognize that there are students who may have a designation of being medically fragile. So as a district, I've been working with Mr. McLemore and Dr. Thomas on establishing the criterion by which a student would be determined to be medically fragile. We worked and relied upon a series of documents that have been provided by the Department of Health, by CDC, among other organizations. IDEA works, and we established a criterion. So as a result of that, if parents are concerned about whether their students will be safe in schools because they have a pre-existing medical concern, there is a form. You can go to the website. There, under the Families tab, there is a little platform by which this is described. It's the first thing under the Family tab on the main page. And there is an eligibility form. And there also is a flow chart that describes what would be deemed as medically fragile. And if you believe that your child is medically fragile, that form would then be downloaded. We are then asking that you have to have that medical form be filled out by the physician, the treating physician, and then submit the form to Sharon Patsalos, who is our health service facilitator. At that point, we will review those forms. And Dr. Thomas, who is our medical director, will also be reviewing those, and we will then determine whether or not the student, based on the criterion established, meets it, and then the families will be notified. At that point, we will be providing a virtual instruction for those students on a case-by-case basis.
So a nationwide study was done by the Department of Education as well as Attendance Works, and it determined that students that participated in virtual learning had a primarily a decreased attendance rate. And this pattern was very similar at NECSD. We found as the year went on that our virtual learners did not participate with the same frequency as our in-person students. So this year, what we're trying to do to address our attendance concerns with our scholars is to build a universal understanding of the importance of attending school daily. We hope to work with buildings to plan different strategies to engage students and parents in attending class daily, as well as using our re-engagement street teams to support families in this transition back to 100% learning. We want to take you through as a team what we have done with our building leaders and behind the scene with district operations and preparing for your students to come back for the 2021 school year.
So at this point, we're going through the scenario of what a typical school day will look like for a child, starting from the moment they're at the home and then going on the bus, coming to our school all the way through until they leave at the end of the day. So I believe, Ms. Soto, are you the one that's going over this?
So what will happen when students have to do a wellness check? So if you recall, last year we had students and staff do daily checks. For students, it was periodic. The CDC is recommending that those checks are no longer need to be in place. However, we strongly recommend that families are doing regular checks in the morning, checking for COVID-19 symptoms. And if any individual, whether staff or student, does experience any of the COVID-19 symptoms, whether it's fever, whether it's body aches, headaches, there's a list of items to make sure that those individuals are staying home. We're encouraging them to stay home and to make sure that they get tested. With regards to mask, the next slide, please. Mask. As announced today, the governor will be instituting a statewide mandate for universal mask. We are, as a district, also requiring masks to be worn in schools. Both the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics recommend universal indoor masking regardless of vaccination status. And so what's going to happen behind the scenes? We're going to be making sure that each building replenishes on any PPE needed. We'll be having administrators communicate with our Division of Facilities, and we'll ensure that those items are in place.
So on the school bus, as per federal mandate, masks will be worn on the bus. Students in the same household will sit together on the buses. Windows will be open to increase ventilation, so we ask that parents dress their children appropriately. Bus drivers will have masks available for students who need a replacement or need one for the day. Bus driver and attendants will be masked at all times, and the bus companies are going to engage in deep cleaning of the buses daily and wiping down all the surface areas.
So in our classrooms, we'll be taking a multi-layered approach to mitigating the spread of the virus in the classroom. Classrooms will be equipped with wall unit hand sanitizers, wipes and sprays. We'll be cohorting to the greatest extent possible. We'll be doing risk assessments before letting students use lockers and cubbies. We'll be limiting the amount of shared materials, and teachers will stress hygiene etiquette. Behind the scenes, we'll continue with our cleaning procedures, and high-touch areas will be cleaned throughout the day. Deep cleaning of rooms where there has been a positive case will occur. We'll do our weekly deep cleaning, and we'll be doing risk assessments, as I already stated, to ensure that we can use lockers and cubbies safely.
So air ventilation, as we know, that the improved ventilation, to extent possible, increases to increase the outdoor air to deliver clean air into the room. Our district has engaged in a big project that allowed us to refurbish all of our ventilation units inside of our classrooms. We are 100% complete with that. What that entailed is that we did a complete cleaning of the univent cabinets, heating and cooling coils. We removed and replaced defective motors and dampers. We replaced damper bearings and seals. We had a replacement of electrical components. We did a complete automation and commissioning of all mechanical functions. So the univent in the classroom, or the units that you may be familiar with in the classroom, allow outdoor air to come into the univent systems and be able to process the air that is in, and it circulates approximately 4 times per hour. These univents, we are fortunate enough as a district that we were able to input MERV 13 filters. The number of the filter means the thickness of the filter. If we go beyond a MERV 13 filter, then it would actually compromise the unit, limit the amount of air, and probably destroy the motor inside the system. However, MERV 13 filters are highly recommended by the CDC as a filter that can filtrate through the COVID-19 virus. We have applied for the Cursor application, which is the second stimulus money, for an additional $6.5 million to upgrade our windows, right? Because we want to be able to get fresh air in. Univents, even though I said 100% of them are restored or replaced parts, et cetera, there are ones that we would like to make new. Even though it refurbished, it's still working to its capacity. We would like to take the opportunity to get more life on them and install new ones, and air handlers as well. We are pending the approval from the state on that, where we're using nearly half of the second stimulus money to increase air ventilation in our schools. All right, thank you. At lunchtime, we're going to maximize our physical distance as much as possible. Hand sanitizers will be available, as well as promoting hand washing. We're going to use outdoor spaces and other spaces when available. We're going to promote cohorting of students. That means keeping particular students together during the classroom time and the eating time. Stress our hygiene etiquette. Assign seats to the greatest extent possible. Behind the scenes, we'll be wiping down the lunch tables in between periods, and deep cleaning will happen on a weekly basis. We believe that this, we would also have our students going through the serving lines so that they have an opportunity of choice for lunch options.
Interscholastic sports and extracurricular activities can enrich students' life in more ways than enhancing their physical skills and their artistic skills. They can teach life lessons and strong core values that would enhance students' future and lives. In addition, these activities have been found to be associated with increased well-being. We understand that prevention strategies during these activities remain important. At a minimum, students and adults will follow the same school day policies and procedures during athletic and extracurricular activities. Coaches and school sports administrators will consider specific sports-related risk factors and risk factors associated with extracurricular activities. We stress that we will monitor and implement health and safety protocol updates. All students, faculty, and staff must wear masks at all times, including dismissal. During dismissal, the faculty and staff will adhere to physical distancing to the extent possible. Building leaders will create traffic patterns to discourage congested areas. The faculty will dismiss immediately after required activities are completed, such as meetings and programs, so that cleaning protocols can be enacted, including high-traffic areas that will require deep cleaning.
So, Madam President, that concludes our report for this evening for opening of schools. I know it was a long presentation. However, I think it's critical to ensure the safety of our students, our faculty, and our staff upon return. For more information, you can jump onto the district website and take a look at the guidebook that gives you very clear and explicit expectations and the programs and strategies that we'll be implementing. I thank you for your time.
Ms. Green, you have a question?
I was just questioning about the upgrading of the ventilation systems. You said it was 100%, so in all of the 13 school buildings, all of the ventilating upgrades have been made in all of the buildings?
Mr. Ramjug, would you like to elaborate on that?
Thank you, yes. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, so the project that Dr. Spindler was referring to is an energy performance contract. It's been underway in the district now for about 2 years. But specifically for the past 18 months, with respect to the ventilation and the equipment that's in the classrooms, and quite frankly, throughout all of the buildings, gymnasium, air handling units, cafeteria air handling units. A specific part of that project was to refurbish all of that equipment. What that means is to open it up, do an inspection, a thorough cleaning, a check on all of the operating parts, and for those that were defective or deficient or worn, all of those parts were removed and replaced. And that happened throughout the entire district, so 100% of that equipment has been done. And we purposefully did that first. And the second part is the building automation, also that Dr. Spindler touched on. So this is a technological-based control system. Prior to that, the district had 7 or 8 antiquated systems that were malfunctioning at times, but they were not standardized. So this is a cutting-edge software program where remotely anyone can get on, anyone that has accessibility can get on. It's a web-based program and monitor on a classroom by classroom, on a unit by unit basis, and be able to see the data points and observe damper positions, temperatures of spaces, all of the moving parts to make sure that they are operating the way they should. So if there is any, and along with that is obviously a protocol for generating any concerns within the building. So that's a real-time email approach to sending out, hey, it's a little warm in room 102, hypothetically, and throughout this technology process, there'll be a real-time response to that. So that has happened. There were some supply chain delays in Meadow and Temple, but those are anticipated to be finished hopefully before the start of school, which is the end of this week. But working around that, the contractor did everything else that needed to be done, and as soon as a couple of those valves come in later on this week, they'll be swapping those out. But other than that, it is 100%. So we are, another step in the process is that we are now engaging Mr. Velez's staff in how to use that software system. So training and development is underway. But in the meantime, until the staff gets familiar and totally educated with how to use the new technology system, the contractor will be monitoring it on our behalf. So we have a communication system in place and we have a responsive system in place.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was done in every single building. That was my question.
Yeah, it's district-wide, by the way, not just the schools, all the
Okay.
other support buildings, including the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Henderson, and then I have two over here.
Thank you, Madam
Dr.
President. I'll
Henderson.
keep it really quick. Last board meeting, I had brought up in discussion if the district and the administration has come up with an established criteria for what's considered an appropriate mask. Has the district done that? So that way all of our students, parents, and staff know what constitutes an effective and appropriate mask covering? Thank you.
Mr. Forget?
Yes. The district has a policy, and in that policy, it defines mask wearing and the descriptions of what appropriate masks or not appropriate masks would be, and I can share that with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, and then Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Madam President. Part of the report talked about the re-engagement of the street teams, and I would love to have a description. What does that look like? Because I truly believe that in order for kids to learn, they must be in school. They need to be in school. And I think the truancy levels are very high in our district with certain populations. And what does that street team look like? I know what it used to look like back a few years ago. I'm not going to date myself, but they used to drive around in vans, see kids that should be in school, pick them up, put them in the van, bring them back to schools. And I'm just curious, what have we done as a district with the pause that we had with the pandemic, and what have we done to reinvent ourselves in regards to getting kids to be in school with the street teams? And then one more question on top of that.
Hang on, so let's get an answer to that one.
Okay, all right,
But you
okay.
are dating yourself there, Mr. Howard.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr.
Yeah.
Roman, can you respond to that, please?
In response to what we did last year during the closure. Initially, we started with making sure that students had the necessary resources. So we packed up the vans with laptops, hotspots, bags of food. We went door to door. There were about 1,200 students at the time, with the outreach with supports from building staff. We also had our school guards, monitors, as well as administrators that actually went door to door, and we were able to reduce that number significantly. I believe it was down to almost like 100 students from 1,200 that we were able to make connections with. In terms of what that's going to look like moving forward, we're working with the attendance team, with Ms. Peterson, to revamp that to ensure that we have the right PPS staff, the attendance staff, and support staff to be able to take that now to the next level, to make sure that we have the community-based supports available, to make sure that we're able to identify what the barriers are to attendance, and make sure that we close that gap.
Go ahead, Mr. Howard.
So my next question would have been, are we equipped? Do we have the resources to build that team up? Because we can't, have intentions of fixing something and not have the proper resources in place to make things happen. I mean, we're not going to put a Band-Aid on a wound. We really need to kick that department up. And the last question I had was, what role are we placing on the parents in regards to the attendance of kids in schools? Are we reaching out to the support services? And I guess the question I want to ask, it's not a popular question, but is there any way that we can tie benefits to school attendance?
So I'll answer a portion of what your question was and defer to Ms. Peterson as well as Dr. Roman. With regards to do we have the staffing and the capacity to do this particular work, we have capacity. We need greater capacity. We have the American Rescue Plan money that we can now begin to earmark towards that. So last year, we had more flexibility with staff because we had the monitors that we could redeploy. Now the monitors have to be built back in buildings doing the work that they're required to do. But using the ARP money, Dr. Spindler and I have met with the team and discussed, should we include and increase the number of PPS as well as monitors that can go door to assist and guide and coach and support families to get the kids connected with the instruction that we're supposed to be providing. I'm going to let Dr. Roman talk to you a little bit about the interagency work that we're doing and the connection with the county supports within the district.
So last year, what we, actually 3 years ago, we instituted a interagency collaboration between various mental health supports, probation, Orange County Health Services, to be able to identify Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. So after everything has been exhausted at the Tier 1 level in our schools, if school buildings are still struggling to either connect with students, behavioral, we're able to bring those students without sharing any names, sharing just what the challenges are. And through that collaborative, we've been able to really support buildings to make sure that they're able to connect. So those are some of the things that we're putting in place moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, my question is, has there been...
Mr. Walker, could you turn your mic on, please? Or thank you, darling. You don't, no, right there. Stay right there, but no, right there and turn your mic.
Hassle being tall. All right. Has there been any discussion about teacher training in terms of dealing with students, particularly, let's say, young kids who maybe have troubles wearing the mask? Will there be mask timeouts? Mask, whatever it's called. Mask breaks. That's what I'm hearing now. Will there be certain strategies? Because I would hate to see kids get labeled as being disobedient or defiant when they're just so young and just simply can't keep it on their faces.
Dr. Roman?
So in terms of mask breaks, we're really ensuring that if a student requires that they have like a separate area outside of the room to ensure that there's social distancing in place. But if they require that level of support, certainly they have the ability to do that. In terms of teaching, it's like everything else. It's going to have to be, how do we support our families at home to ensure that they're building the capacity to keep these on longer and help encourage that messaging at home, as well as our teachers working to make sure that students are doing that and using just positive praise to make sure that students are doing what they need to do. Our teachers have been doing a really nice job with that in our schools.
I see Mrs. Moriarty, and then I'll get to you, Mrs. Burton. Go ahead, Mrs. Moriarty.
I just wanted to share a couple anecdotals. So last year, the younger ones were really very good at wearing the mask. They were the ones who did, and they would tell each other about themselves when they weren't wearing the mask. So I think that they'll be fine. That's we hope.
Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I know we're kind of all over the place with this particular presentation, but back to the attendance action plans. So do we know the number of students in each building, in each classroom, who are already considered chronically, have chronic attendance issues prior to coming to school next week? So that's one question. And number two, when can we expect the attendance action plans from each school?
Ms. Peterson?
So prior to schools, building level leaders will know who their chronically absent students are. A part of the plan is also to review their strategies and their tiered interventions in building, whether that's with the classroom teacher, their support staff, and their family and community engagement strategy to increase student attendance. So at the beginning of the year, I will be meeting with building level leaders and reviewing their tiered intervention plans as well as the strategies with their assigned attendance aide to try to mitigate some of our attendance issues and to try to re-engage students in learning.
Go ahead, Ms. Burton, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Stradone.
And so is it your department that's monitoring the results, or so how from each of these schools, who's responsible, and who's ultimately looking at the data? Is it you? You're looking at the data? And
So-
when is it coming in? How is it coming into you?
So the first point of data around attendance is actually within our classrooms daily when a teacher takes attendance, as well as the certification of that attendance in the office. Weekly reports can be run by the building level leader, but this is really going to be a collaboration between the attendance team, pupil personnel, family and community engagement, and curriculum and instruction to really ensure that our scholars are engaged in learning and they're participating daily. So it's going to be a multi-tiered strategy to get our students re-engaged. My attendance team can't do it without PPS. PPS can't do it without family and community engagement. So we're all working collaboratively, and a part of that process comes from our MTSS system, where we are engaging in conversations with our school communities about building interventions.
Ultimately, when is all of this data coming in so that we know consistently from each school what the status of chronic absenteeism is? I mean, are you going to be generating regular reports so that we know this data? I would like to know the data. I don't know if anybody else would like to know the data. I'd like to know the data.
Ms. Peterson?
So the data around chronic absenteeism, there's also the daily attendance rate report that I do provide to the board weekly, is something that is refreshed often. I think that this is a conversation that we should speak as a team to decide how we present our chronic absenteeism data as well as a report on our tiered interventions to get our students reengaged.
Thank you. Mr. Stridiron.
I have a few questions, but I'm just going to limit myself to one, thank God.
Thank you.
So I saw the town hall last week, the virtual town hall, and I noticed that there were a lot of parents that were very concerned about what's going to happen this year for protection for their students and all that masking, and they want the option of opting out. That's not going to be an option, right? There's not going to be an opt-out for in-person instruction unless the student has a medically fragile situation. So it's not going to be an option for this entire year, or are we going to play this by ear?
Mr. Forget.
Yeah, at this time, virtual is only going to be considered for those students that are medically fragile. I'm not going to make a decision on what's going to happen throughout the year. I think we have to monitor the data as we go through. We have to keep on track of the CDC transmission levels and all of those particular pieces, and listen to the guidance that's coming from the CDC, listen to the guidance coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as hopefully additional guidance coming from the New York State Department of Health. So I will not say it's a permanent decision. I will say at this time, we would really, really appreciate having all students in person 5 days a week for a variety of reasons. We need to see these students. We need to be able to connect with these students. We need to support these students. Our goal is for in-person 5 days. We'll monitor the data, and if that changes, we will definitely keep you and the community aware.
Thank you. I think we're questioned out, so can we move on to the capital project update?
So what I was sharing with you prior was the update on our energy performance contract. Just one more bit of information on that is that we had a third amendment up to the State Education Department, and that was approved minus a couple formalities. So we will be moving ahead with scheduling more work under that umbrella in the near future. Again, to Dr. Spindler's point, the energy performance contract work is an initial capital improvement approach. In parallel with that, the district did secure 2 capital bonds, one for architectural work and one in parallel for mechanical work. And both of those are underway. We've been very busy this past summer, and it's only going to get busy as the year progresses. So since the end of the initial project was our swimming pool, which was highly successful. It opened up in late spring, and we have moved forward with a number of projects specifically for New Windsor. And here this evening is Mr. Luis Rodriguez from the Palumbo Group to provide you the intricate details about where we are on each of the current and future project fronts. Lou?
Good evening, and I'll make this quick. Glad to be here, listening to all the, thank you, great things you guys are doing for getting the kids back into classes. In parallel, we're going to be working on, like Roger said, the proposition work that was passed, and I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up and what we're working on. I want to talk about the Project 4A, which is the New Windsor demo of the tower, and talk about what's coming up as far as bidding. We have 3 projects coming up for bidding in the spring, and just some Q&A if you needed it. Project 4A was the New Windsor Tower. We awarded this on July 15th. There were 2 contracts. One was a hazardous material contract for abatement of the tower, and then general construction for taking the tower down. Both of those contracts were a little over $800,000. The schedule as it stands, we did mobilize on July 19th. We did abate the building. We were completed by August 6th. We started the tower demo on the 10th, and we're looking to be completed with the demo of the tower by the 20th. Right now, the tower is down. There is a basement level, and we're removing the basement as we speak. site restoration, and site to be completed by October 8th. Right now, we have no change orders to date. We have kept the contractors according to schedule. The schedule was an October 8th completion for all of this work, and we're doing really well. Just some quick pictures. This really talks to the building that was coming down. This is close to 16,000 square feet of structure that was coming down in the back of the building. This talks to the building egress and site logistics. So when the building comes down, we are setting up for the next phase of work, which is going to be an addition at the back of the building. And we want the make sure the Board of Ed and the community know that there will be safety in place, and egress set for the students when the building is occupied. And where the new building is going to be built, that whole site will be under containment. And you'll see that we have 8-inch high or 8-foot high fencing. The blue talks to the 5-foot minimum egresses that we will establish for when the students are back in school. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that safety is utmost importance. We've also made sure that all the ventilators on that side of the building that were on the side of the demo have been cleaned, and making sure that Andy's making sure there's new filters are in those units. Hard barriers. This will continue to be in place. Right now, there are hard barriers that will. This used to be an exit out the back of the building, which no longer exists. So we want to just show you that we do have hard barriers within the building to keep the students out of the construction area. This is what the fencing looks like around the project for site containment. We do have a visual barrier there, so you don't have a lot of attractive nuisance there. This just talks a little bit about water mitigation when the building was coming down. We did do a really good job. Roger was out meeting with the local neighbors, making sure they understood the process, and the building came down, and we kept everything to a minimum as far as noise, dust. Beginning of the demo, you see some of this just good. We have a lot of great photos of the building coming down. Beginning of demo. This is the back of the building facing east. So it gives you a good idea of, again, how significant it is. You can see low side. You can see there's a full 5,000 square feet of building that's actually below grade there that we're demoing. This is the building facing north or west. This is northwest facing north. So again, that's the demo of the New Windsor Tower. I really feel good about where we are to date. And again, safety is most important right now. Next thing I just wanted to talk about briefly is what we're coming out to bid with. The first thing is we broke the CT site project into 2 phases. One is site clearing, and then it's going to be the actual CTE building. So we're actually going out to bid next week, next Monday. We're going to have a pre-bid walkthrough on September 9th with the contractors, bid opening on September 21st. If everything goes all well with the bid, we will be making a recommendation to the board for the September 28th board meeting. If for some reason contractors need additional time, we will come back and ask for a contingency date as far as a recommendation to the board. The next phase of bidding is going to be Heritage. There's additions and renovations happening at Heritage. There's going to be an addition to the cafeteria and mechanical upgrades throughout the whole building. Officially at the bid September 7th. Pre-bid walkthrough, again with the contractors through the building so they understand the scope, September 22nd. Bid opening October 5th, and then we're looking to make a recommendation to the board by October 12th. And again, this would be based on a successful bid opening and being within budget. The last project that we're going to be bidding towards, the third project we're bidding is the Valesgate additions and renovations. The modulars are going to be taken down, and we're going to be building a new addition where the modulars are. We're going to be out to bid officially by September 27th. Pre-bid walkthrough by the 12th. October 26th would be the bid opening, and we will be looking to make a recommendation to the board at the November 9th board meeting. So these are three, again, significant projects that we're looking to get out on the street with. Heritage and Vales Gate would be looking to be fully complete by December of 2022. Just last final statement, safety is most important to us, especially with the kids and staff coming back after a long break. We want to make sure safety is number one priority. We've been spending a lot of time on logistics plans and safety plans across all the sites, and we're going to continue to do that and modify those plans to make sure they fit the district's needs. Construction contract, contractors are not allowed to talk with any staff at all. We have a zero tolerance policy. If they do, they're kicked off the site. Everyone's required to wear ID badges. Again, just a reminder, there are inconveniences. What we want to do is make sure there's a good line of communication. Get to us. If there is a problem, we'll fix it. We do have full-time supervision on site during construction, so there's always someone to talk to. And again, all communications are through us. So that's it. Short, simple. And again, I think we're in a great place, and thank you.
Any board members, questions, comments? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're now at the section of the agenda for public discussion on comments on agenda items. Excuse me. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comments that is posted next to the sign-in sheet. We do have Mr. Lamar that's signed up. Would you like to come up and speak, please? Remember, there's a 5-minute timer, so wait until the timer starts. And thank you.
78 Keats Drive, New Windsor. Today, my 14-year-old son said this to my wife after talking to his friends. Mom, we're scared. My friends and I are expecting that someone's going to die. We don't want to get COVID, and we don't want to bring it to our families. And he told her about a new variant the kids are reading about called COVID-22 that may be even worse than Delta. I think that when you observe the PowerPoints at your meetings and have the chance to question and oversee the district's plans, you should keep the words of my son in mind, and all the kids of this district. Kids are aware of what's going on and want a choice about their risk, too. Since May of 2020, my family's been writing you to urge attention to keeping the students and staff in this district safe. I've written multiple emails now requesting that the tens of millions this district was given to be used to upgrade ventilation systems in our schools. I'm profoundly disappointed this did not happen. But you know where you did get upgraded ventilation? In the superintendent's office. That happened at the start of COVID. Those employees are lucky enough not to have had to ask repeatedly for safe air like the students and staff in our schools do. I have this question. Where is the $30.3 million? What did you do with the money that the federal government gave you to open schools safely? Investing in ventilation is a no-brainer. As I've explained multiple times now, COVID is an aerosolized virus. I've even suggested plans and offered to help in any way to get this done. All that was facilitated was that the same univents that were there are still there. The superintendent put online the survey in the spring for parents, and that was the highest rated priority, ventilation. What was the contingency plan if upgrades took too long? The CDC recommends HEPA purifiers for buildings with insufficient ventilation. Why wasn't money spent to put them in every classroom, like the new schools in New York City? Also, it's time to stop pretending that putting MERV 13 filters in existing equipment is some huge mitigation. The univents need clean filters anyway. You were paying for new filters when you changed them in the past, before COVID. MERV filters are not that much more expensive and do not add up to $30.3 million. No efforts were made to create a realistic remote option that did not include exhausting teachers to the point of breakdowns. Why weren't more teachers hired? Why won't you allow teachers that were good at remote and want remote to pair with students who want remote? We all know that you cannot properly socially distance our kids. We all know that you have them eating with their masks off without distancing. We all know that giving a remote option makes the kids in school safer too. And we all know that there are fewer mitigations this year than last year at a time when more children are getting sick. Where's the $30.3 million, and who is accountable for opening the district with fewer mitigations, even though you were charged by the government to do more? Most of the presentations that take place here are about getting around or discontinuing mitigation. How did you represent taxpayers that do not want to take the risks you choose for us with our kids' lives? Where is our voice? Where are our options? We know that the schools were not made safer. Where is our representation? What did you do with the $30.3 million?
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board on agenda items? Would you like to come up? You have 5 minutes, and please state your name and what agenda item you're speaking on, please.
Yes, my name is David Ryan. I'm speaking on the matter of the school opening. Made some notes here. First of all, I see some friendly faces here. I say hello to all of you. I left Newburgh, went to Plattsburgh State, and I came back with a motto that I live by today. I'm going to carry that through in what I have to say today, so please know that when I speak here. That motto is, by love we conquer. The district's vision is that through the work of all, we will achieve inclusive and excellence. Yes? Inspiring students to become tomorrow's leader beyond Academy Field is your mission. You've done just that. I smell something afoul here, and I really need you to address it. It has nothing to do with the elephant in the room. And I've learned in Newburgh that it's never easy or convenient to do the right thing. If it were, everybody would do it. Tonight, in no particular order, as a father, as a husband, as a Jew, as a resident of Newburgh, as a taxpayer, which is a little bit different than a resident, and a former board member, which I never thought I would lay on that again, but tonight I will. I'm going to ask on behalf of all observant and quasi-observant Jews, hypocrite, I take the pledge. The high holiday Jews, I might be a little bit more than that myself, that you reconsider holding classes on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. You can introduce a resolution to add something to the agenda. I've seen you do it tonight. I'm asking you, all of you as a body to do this again tonight. I'm asking you to introduce another resolution tonight that you consider whether or not it's worth alienating your Jewish staff, whether or not you're willing to set the example, unlike New York City, which I heard mentioned earlier tonight, of being open. I've been in Newburgh since 1973, 3 years shy of my entire life, and I have never known this school to be open, these schools to be open on Rosh Hashanah Day 2. There are some of you who I cannot address directly because of your policy, but you must dig deep tonight and decide whether or not you are going to make that additional agenda item to reconsider it. And after you put it on the agenda, you may have to table it so you can discuss it later in your executive session. Because it's a big leap I'm asking you for. I'm asking you to change your calendar at the last minute. I know what I'm asking you for, but I'm not speaking for myself, and I'm not speaking for my wife who's a teacher, and I'm not speaking for my children. I'm speaking for every member of this community, both Jew, Muslim, Christian, and non-believer alike. Because if you change your way now, there is no going back. You might think you can make it right next year, but you're doing wrong now. Think about that. You are setting an example for all of Newburgh that it's okay now, 20 years, 40 years later. How many years later? 47 years later? 48? You're saying it's okay to go to school on Rosh Hashanah. It's okay to come to work on Rosh Hashanah. I know your answer. you'll be excused. Separate but equal was not good for Brown versus Board of Ed, and it's not good for us now. You say the teachers won't be penalized and their careers won't be hampered. But guess what? They will be absent on the first day of school, or whatever day of school that is, if I'm wrong. Realize the position you're putting people in and the example that you're setting. Only by the grace of God do we have the media here, so maybe we can shine some light on this darkness. Do not fail yourselves this time. Do not fail this community. Do not fail my children. Do not fail my wife, your employee. Do not fail anybody in Newburgh. You have an opportunity to be an example. I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to use every last second of these 5 minutes. I'm going to ask you again. Consider adding an agenda item tonight that gives you the opportunity to reconsider opening on September the 8th. I heard words tonight about progressive, positive manner. I want you to move ahead in a progressive, positive manner. I don't want to raise my voice at you. I'm not really angry at you. I'm just a little disappointed. We're all parents. We know what disappointment feels like. New York City, as I said, is closed on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Newburgh, I ran these streets too, Mr. Howard. Newburgh is the 6th borough, no? Well, step up, Newburgh. You want to shoulder up? Shoulder up. Don't let your Jewish community down. We're a minority, but we're not that small of a minority, and we have a voice. And please, don't make us exercise it. We love Newburgh just as much as anyone else. I'm asking you to do the right thing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate most of your camaraderie. I appreciate your thoughtfulness, whether you appreciate me or not. And I thank you all for your time. And I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors tonight. I know you have a heavy, heavy, heavy toll ahead of you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on agenda items? If not, we are now going to take a mask break. Please, 5 minutes, no longer. Go outside, take your mask off, do what we plan to do with the kids, and then come back and we'll continue with the agenda.
Are you Mr. Squidiron?
Yes.
I'm a friend of Lisa Sachs.
Oh.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I used to Laura there. Well, it used to be there. Now it's Guyner. I used to work for the district. I'm retired and I'm writing for Maybe some times. I just wanted to say hello.
Oh, nice to meet you.
I misunderstand something. I thought lawyers, it's a community about this.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
I would have. I just fell out of my chair.
Okay, everybody, let's get back, please. I know I hated to do. I know everybody needed that little break just to take off your mask and breathe a little bit. It was good. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary, Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary Curriculum Instruction presents items 5.1 through 5.3 as the consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. Exceptional Learners this evening has one item, recommendations from the CSE and CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green?
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. I present items 7.1 through 7.11 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any items? Yes, sir.
7.5 and 7.10.
Anybody else? I'd like to entertain a motion on all but 7.5 and 7.10.
So moved.
Can I have a second? Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Let's move on to item 7.5. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Shaw, would you like to speak on 7.5, please?
Yes, Madam President, at the last board meeting, the board approved settlement agreements with 4 transportation vendors. This was a deep discount over the original contracts, and it related back to the fact that the state was not giving the full state aid based upon the runs that were anticipated. And then due to COVID, when all of them weren't performed, the vendor was looking to be paid for the runs, and the district wasn't getting its state aid allotment. That's very significant. So like the other 4 that were voted on at the last meeting, this is a compromise amount to settle litigation.
Board members, questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
We're going to move on to item 7.10. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Could someone provide an example of what a liability reserve would be used for?
Dr. Spindler or Mr. Shaw?
A liability reserve fund is authorized under the board's powers, 1709, paragraph 8-C, and that's to put money aside for potential litigations, the cost to pay for damages, the cost for attorney's fees, if there are any prevailing attorney's fees. So those would be examples, and if the monies are not utilized, they would then be subject to placement within the general fund. It isn't restricted like some of the Article 2 general municipal law funds.
Yes, sir.
Have we had a liability reserve fund in the past 2 decades in Newburgh?
Mr. Shaw?
I don't have a specific recollection, but it is a relatively common fund. It often would pay for contingencies with respect to special education litigation, or if there are any other litigations that are looming. In current times, it's not uncommon to have funds set aside for Child Victims Act case settlements, should that occur.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein?
That concludes my items for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President.
On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 8.1 through 8.12 for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Second. Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradar.
Do we still perform exit interviews for those employees that resign?
May I respond?
Sure, Mr.
Madam
McElroy.
President? For those who choose to.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Maida?
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from August 10th, August 13th, and August 20th as consent.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Ms. Green? Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're now at the portion of the agenda for public discussion on non-agenda items. Please refer to the procedure sheet next to the sign-in sheet. And I would like to remind everybody, please don't use names, people's names, when you're talking at the mic. So first, we have Mr. Lamar again.
Hello again. Again, Brian Lamar, 78 Keats Drive, New Windsor. My family's been in this district for the last 25 years. In the past, and under different leadership, a call or an email to the Board of Education, Superintendent's office, or a school principal would receive a prompt response. In the last 2 years, I've sent emails without reply. The teachers and frontline employees who actually do communicate appear to be consistently left out of the loop. I once suspected this was a problem with communication, but it's obvious to me that this is a deficit in the ability to manage the school district and plan in a timely manner. I'm sure there are many who would point to Facebook posts and town halls or Board of Ed meetings with PowerPoint presentations and parent surveys as great examples of communication by the district. But none of these methods have engaged with the public in a useful way. The communication from the district during Board of Ed meetings and town halls is reduced to sound bites without usable information for parents. When presentations are made by the Board of Ed, very few questions are asked publicly, and therefore the transparency is missing. Over the past 10 years, I've noticed a real decline in transparency in the district. That being said, I do appreciate the scrutiny by the Board of Ed tonight, but we haven't had this level of scrutiny for many meetings recently. Now, I'm not the only one with questions. With the new school year upon us, the families served by the Newburgh School District have many of the same questions I asked over the course of years of the emails. On top of that, there are personnel issues involving what seems to me to be an increased number of lawsuits against the district and now a suspension amid accusations of inappropriate conduct. Sorry. I want to believe that all of you are on this board for the right reasons. However, when I see the few questions that are asked given half an answer, when I see lines of questioning shut down entirely, when I hear no actual evidence of improvement in our district or real planning, when I hear no teacher voices, and there are rushed last-minute presentations to the public as if the members of the school community are an aside, I truly question whether the board is upholding its responsibility of oversight. We are a school district. I lost my place. We are not a bullet point on someone's resume or the poster district for someone's career. Last week, 3 of you walked out over a personnel matter. Did you do this when there was no accounting of preparations made to begin the school year? What message does this send the community? which is your priority?
Mr. Stridarn.
On April 4th, 2019, the Orange County District Attorney released a grand jury report outlining the lack of procedures and oversight that allowed limitless manipulation of student-athlete attendance records in order to conceal violations of district policies and the misuse of Apex online learning in order to artificially increase graduation rates. I attended the board meeting that same night and heard with my own ears a high-ranking district official say, "We need to find out who did this to us and make them pay for it." I was one of the many district-related persons that testified as to what was occurring here with respect to attendance. For my part in coming forward to tell the truth, my family and I have been the victims of massive retaliation by high-ranking officials in this district. I have had 7 tires destroyed with nails, screws, or other methods. 2 of my vehicles have had headlights broken, and items have been stolen from my property. On May 13, 2019, my son was officially named the valedictorian of the class of 2019 at NFA. He received the official letter from the principals and had photos taken in front of the high school by the district communications strategist. Within 1 week, high-ranking district officials recalculated his GPA based on a new system, and he was no longer the valedictorian. I was told I had 3 hours to provide all of our proof of my son's educational record. Within hours, another high-ranking district official, using the alias Joey Johns, called a reporter from the Times-Herald-Record. The reporter told me he claimed I was using my power on the board to rob a poor Hispanic kid of the title of valedictorian, and that needed to run a story on that. That not-too-smart official used his personal cell phone, and when the reporter contacted me to inquire about this information, I confirmed the true identity of that Joey Johns cell phone number, since I had it stored as a contact in my cell phone. This district official used my son's private student information, confidential legal information, and added a racial component to the false story in an attempt to cause racial division in the community if the story ran. District officials then sent not 1, but 5 falsified transcripts to Columbia University when my son was accepted and had a fully paid scholarship. The university repeatedly told us that if a valid transcript was not sent by the district by August 1st, my son would not be allowed to enroll. We tried to get a copy of my son's transcript to review, and we were told that the superintendent's office was personally handling his transcript. My son was stressing out, so I wrote to the school board as a parent for help. Instead of helping, the same Joey Johns called a special meeting of the board to make me, quote, cease and desist from my frivolous actions. The August 1st deadline passed, and still no transcript was sent by the superintendent's office. We were devastated and stressed out. All of my son's hard work was turning into a nightmare. How dare you hurt my son and my family? How many other sons and daughters have you hurt over the years? How many other staff members and parents have you targeted and put in terrible situations? You might be asking where my son ended up. As of tonight, he has finished writing his book called Scheming in the Dark. It's about what he and others have lived through in this school district. He is aware of all the local news reports circulating about the district in the past week. He is working on a project with a team of professionals to get the story of what you did to him out to thousands of people. Everyone here can type in scheminginthedark.com on their phones to learn more. You can also view his trailer, contact his team, and subscribe to the book's newsletter using the link. Over 2,000 people have reviewed the trailer since April. District employees told me they were excited and thrilled. One person outside the country who my son showed the trailer to called the book revolutionary. Many district employees, including superintendents, administrators, volunteered to sit with my son for several hours and describe what they've seen transpire in the district. He wants more people to come to him in light of last week's news. To the many others who are there, who are too afraid to come forward out of fear of retaliation, come forward now. My family knows all too well how hard it is to stand up to corruption and intimidation. It has been a long 8 years for us, and I ask you to stand with us. I believe in you. Those that intimidate others lose their power when people stand up to them. If we do this now, the era of intimidation will come to an end.
Mr. John Doré. Thank you, sir. Mr. William Walker.
I just wanted to set the record straight from something that happened last week. A member of the media said that the vote against an employee to be suspended for the district was unanimous. I just wanted to make it very clear that I did not vote in favor of that resolution, and I want to be perfectly clear and transparent. I did not support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items? Okay, but you can't talk about the same thing that you talked about.
I will not.
Thank you. Could you state your name, please?
Sure. My name is David Ryan. I live at 7 Holt Lane, Newburgh, New York. I'm an NFA graduate of 1988. And in keeping with your policy, I will speak about a non-agenda item. It's an item that you have not put on your agenda yet. I'll leave it at that since I've been admonished, ma'am. I feel very deeply for all of you. When I sat there with Annette, and some of you never had to face a situation that you had to face tonight. And you took action for the safety of our children, for the well-being. You're setting an example for our community. Sure. Can I just lower it like the previous speakers? Would that be better? So, all right. Thank you. No worries. So early in the evening, and I hope I'll get my time back when the bell dings, but early in the evening, I asked you to step up and do the right thing. And last week, I saw you do what you think is the right thing. We'll find out in time. I'm going to try not to get there, Ms. Mineo, but I'm going to ask you again, because this is the last agenda item before you go into executive session. It takes one action by any one of you to raise your hand and say, I have something to add. We're live. Your community will see whether or not you stand here passively or take action like a citizen, a taxpayer, a resident, a parent, a member of the community has asked you to do. Ms. Mineo, I understand.
But I asked you if
you did, and I have a lot of respect for you and your position, but I have to tell you, beyond passion, this is hypercritical to Newburgh and our all success. Right. Well, only because I saw inaction, ma'am. If I saw action, I'd be sitting in that chair right now. If any one of these board members were elected and said, I have something to add, I'd like to reconsider whether or not we're open on the second day of Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Please sit down now.
But remember, your inaction will be visible to all.
I get it, but
Once again.
Thank you.
Before your executive session.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session. Yes, Mr. Stridine?
Are we able to add it after the executive session and say we could possibly do business after executive session?
Well, we could be doing business after executive session. That's,
So we could add an item after the executive session.
yes, you could.
Thank you.
It's possible. Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: employment history of particular individuals and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
We may be doing business when we return. Thank you. Okay, we're back. You ready? Okay, thank you. Mr. Stridiron,
I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda.
can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call to add? Oh, what is the?
It's September 8th is a religious holiday.
Thank you. Roll call to add. Sorry.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Maida? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Mr. Walker? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Can you give us the language of the resolution?
Be it resolved, the board hereby adopts the calendar for the 21-22 school year to include a religious holiday for September 8th.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Yes, ma'am?
So I just want to say that I am not opposed to adding this holiday to our calendar. However, I do want the gentleman who has come before us to be clear that this is not the normal protocol in terms of how we have done business since I've been on the board. And so there has been an opportunity last year where we raised the idea of changing Columbus Day, not changing Columbus Day, but adding Indigenous Day with Columbus Day. And it was told that, oh, we need to have some discussion about that. So I truly want you to understand that, you know, I'm not opposed to it. However, I do feel a little pressured, and I don't like feeling pressured because I was specifically, as well as every board member, was called out. And I understand your passion, and I applaud your due diligence to get what you want. And I hope to see you back when it comes to our voting on adding Indigenous Day to our calendar. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Roll call?
Ms. Green? Yes. Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
I just wanted to remember how other communities have certain things that they want came in here.
Ms. Burton?
I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Maida? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?